Chapter 37:10. Because she didn't want to live alone, she rented out one of the rooms. The other room was occupied by a friend she met later on. When she opened the door, two pairs of eyes immediately looked at her. One of the eyes was filled with curiosity. This gaze belonged to her close friend Jimanji. "Xiaogua, you're back?" Jimanji stood up and walked to Tangua. She asked uncertainly, "Is what the internet said true? Did you really plagiarize that high school student's song?" "Xiaogua, why would you do such a thing?" Tangua glanced at Jimanji and said word by word, "I didn't plagiarize her. But she released it earlier than you, and she sang it herself. Did you not have any inspiration? So you couldn't help but plagiarize her when you saw someone with a similar style as you?" Tangua glanced at Jimanji. She didn't answer the previous question. Instead, she said, "I'm going to sell the house. I'll give you 3 days to move out." She had no interest in keeping a green tea bitch like Jimanji here. The original owner didn't care about the rent and let Jimanji eat and live here for free. Jimanji was curious. She even turned on the recording on her phone. She wanted Gu Ninji to admit it herself. Tomorrow, she could take the recording out of the newspaper and put it on the internet. She might get a handsome bonus. What a traitor. Sell the house. "Xiaogua, why are you selling the house all of a sudden? If you sell the house, where will I live?" Jimanji couldn't help but stomp her feet. She forgot to ask Tangua about plagiarizing the high school student's song. This house was good. Every room was very big, and the security of the community was good. The main thing was that she didn't have to spend a cent to live here. She could also eat for free. She couldn't bear to move out. "Yumeng, I'm going to sell the house." Tangua walked in front of Dream and repeated, "I'll refund the rent you paid in advance and the deposit to you later. Since I'm the one who broke the contract, I'll pay you 1 month's rent." Dream blinked. "But I like living here. Rent is not a problem. Let me live here and I'll pay you double. If it's not enough, I'll pay you 3 to 5 times. How much do you think you should pay? You can name your price. But I have to sell it. The company has already persuaded me to resign. I won't be staying here anymore. How much are you selling it for? I'll buy it." Yumeng was still speaking in a particularly flat tone. She had a delicate appearance and a petite figure. But the words she spoke were like those of a big shot, with a particularly powerful background. Hearing Dream's tone, Tangua did not doubt that the other party was not short of money. In the original owner's memory, there was almost no sense of existence. Maybe you sat in the living room and watched TV for a while before you realized that there was another person sitting on the other side of the sofa. The original owner didn't have any interest in prying into other people's privacy. As long as the tenants didn't mess around in her house and bring in random people, she wouldn't ask anything. "You really want to buy it?" Tangua asked again. This house was meticulously decorated, but for her, she really didn't need it. Originally, the original owner also sold this house, but she didn't sell it so early. Yumeng answered softly and nodded. "How much? When can you sell it? Can you sell it now?" The peak. Chapter 37:11. Dream glanced at the incredulous Jimanji and said, "When the house is mine, I'll throw out all the annoying trash." "Hey, what do you mean? Who are you calling trash?" Jimanji clearly felt that Dream was calling her trash, so she didn't take it lying down. "Xiaogua, how can you sell the house to this kind of person? She's so annoying. How dare she call me trash?" "Xiaogua, aren't we friends? If you're my friend, then kick her out and don't sell the house to her," Jimanji said righteously. If she had the money to buy a house, would she still rent here? She's clearly a poor person pretending to be rich. "I want to buy your house. Since it's still early, let's go through the formalities." Dream turned a deaf ear to Jimanji's words. Perhaps she only thought of her as a buzzing bug. How could a human argue with a bug? If they didn't like it, they could just spray some insecticide to kill it. Tangua saw that Dream was so straightforward and said, "Wait for me. I'll go get the documents. Since you're sincere about buying it, I'll sell it to you for 5 million. That's a bargain. The market price of this house is already over 6 million. If I sell it to you, it should be able to find a good owner. After all, you're more diligent than me and often clean the trash." The pajamas that Dream was wearing were also very cute. When she stood up, it happened to be a Mickey Mouse pattern. It was very vivid. She held a pitiful round face and said very seriously, I am a person who is a bit of a clean freak. Then I'll be more at ease if I sell this house to you. System, wonderful person. Jimanji was about to go crazy when she heard their conversation. She chased after Tang Gua and said, Xiao Gua, are you really going to sell the house to her? It's such a good location, and you're only selling it for 5 million. If you ask me, it should be at least 7 million. Also, her words were so unpleasant. Xiao Gua, are you my friend or not? Do you even care about a friend like me? Do you really have the heart to see me move out of here and live on the streets? Do you think of me as a friend? Tang Gua turned around and asked. Jimanji hurriedly said, Of course I treat you as a friend. We're good sisters and best friends. We have such a good relationship. You can't bear to see me living on the streets, right? Why would he want to sell a perfectly fine house? Even if you don't live there now, you can live there in the future. If you don't mind, I can help you look for a house. Then why did you turn on the recording and ask me if I really stole the high school student's work? I haven't forgotten your identity. You're a reporter, Jimanji. Jimanji was a two-faced person. It could be said that Jimanji played a big part in exposing so many secrets of the original owner. In addition, she added fuel to the fire, causing the entire internet to attack the original owner. If the original owner didn't have the identity of a rich second generation and some backing, she would have collapsed long ago. Xiao Gua. Tang Gua had already entered the room and brought all the documents and property certificates. Jimanji saw that she was serious and panicked. She hurriedly chased after her. Xiao Gua, you really don't care about me anymore? If you want to sell the house, at least leave it for half a month, so that I have time to move out, right? Jimanji said angrily. She didn't fall out with Jimanji, because she wanted to see if she could salvage the situation. After all, this kind of advantage wasn't something that could be taken advantage of often. The peak. Chapter 37:12. She had lived here for several years, and hadn't spent much money on living. Even some of her bags and clothes had been borrowed from the original owner. Now that the original owner had left, she had to sell the house. Wasn't she worried to death? You're not my tenant. You've lived here for several years, and haven't paid a single cent for rent or utilities. So, if I tell you to leave immediately, you have to leave immediately. Of course, when we go to transfer the ownership, the house will belong to Dreams. Xiao Gua, don't worry. I'll deal with the things that shouldn't exist in the house. Dreams had changed into a cute dress and a candy-colored bag. Seeing that the two of them really went to transfer the ownership, Jimanji gritted her teeth in anger, but there was nothing she could do. No matter how she pretended to be pitiful, Tang Gua didn't seem to fall for it. She decided to go back to her room and see what was going on online about Tang Gua stealing the high school student's work. Then she would write an article about it. Tang Gua was heartless to her, so she couldn't blame her for being unjust. It would take several days to complete all the procedures. Tang Gua wasn't in a hurry. Dreams wasn't in a hurry either. But now that they had signed the contract, Dreams had already transferred the money to Tang Gua's account. So, apart from the fact that the house hadn't been transferred yet, Dreams was the only one who owned the house. Tang Gua didn't want to see Jimanji, so she said, I'll come back another day. Okay, then I'll go back and clean up the trash first. Tang Gua couldn't help but smile. She didn't expect this girl to be so interesting. She called a taxi and planned to go home first. Her parents' generation didn't care much about things in the circle of songwriters and arrangers, so they probably didn't know about it yet. If it hadn't involved the popular singer Zhuo Jing, they probably wouldn't have been able to get out of the circle. It was mainly because Zhuo Jing had a lot of fans in Kong In that the matter was blown out of proportion. However, only the group of people who were not late for surfing the internet every day knew about this. Dreams returned to her house and saw that Jimanji was still there. She said, The house is mine now. Please move out immediately. Where's Xiao Gua? Why isn't Xiao Gua back? Dreams sat on the sofa and looked up at Jimanji. She'll come back another day to move her things. She can't stay here anymore. No, I'll wait for her here. Jimanji decided to continue using her shameless skills. Anyway, she would stay here for as long as she could. She wanted to rent a room. In this place, with such a big room, it would cost at least 3,000 to 5,000 yuan a month. She couldn't even afford a single room. Her salary wasn't high to begin with. If she were to go out and rent an apartment, her standard of living would immediately shrink by more than half. Dreams. T. Jimanji couldn't believe that there was someone in the dream who dared to call security. Her face was particularly ugly. If you think your luggage is too heavy, I'll ask someone to help you move it to the entrance of the neighborhood. This time, Jimanji knew she couldn't refuse and could only give up. She decided to polish the manuscript later and add in Dream, this sarcastic roommate, to let the netizens see this kind of hateful person. Chapter 37:13. Jimanji called someone to pack up her things, afraid that she would be kicked out by the security guards. She was a reporter, after all, and it would be bad if she was photographed. When the room was almost empty, she saw that Tanggua's door was unlocked, so she couldn't help but go in to take a look. She was dazzled by the bags and jewelry inside. There were also some clothes with the tags still on, which made her very envious. Usually, when she needed something to match, she would come to take it. Tanggua didn't seem to say anything, so it shouldn't be too much for her to take 1 or 2 pieces, right? When Jimanji was about to take some bags and jewelry, Yu's voice came from behind her. Taking without asking is stealing. Sister, don't touch other people's things. It's not like you don't know my relationship with Tanggua. I'm just taking a necklace that I like. She won't mind. She was going to give me this necklace before. Besides, it's just an ordinary necklace with a few diamonds. It's not worth much. Jimanji felt that there were so many sparkling diamonds on the necklace, so it must be man-made diamonds. Not many people would be so extravagant to use so many real diamonds on a necklace. 1 diamond on that necklace is enough to send you to prison. Yumeng dialed Tanggua's phone. Yes, she's going to take a diamond necklace, the one with 18 diamonds, and a certain horse bag. I know what I have. I'll bring someone back to clean it up. If one of them is missing, I'll ask the police to come and help. Yu smiled and turned on the loudspeaker. Jimanji's expression changed. Be careful. You can't afford to pay for it if it's broken. You'll be in prison for a long time. Jimanji left the neighborhood with a face full of resentment. She made countless calls that day, but no one took her in. They either said that their mother, siblings, or they were traveling. These snobs. In the end, she could only stay in a cheap hotel for the time being, and slowly look for a house. That night, she became a water army and posted the polished article. Because it included the topic of Tanggua stealing a song from a high school student, it quickly attracted a lot of attention. Many details about Tanggua's life were exposed in the article. Of course, it was all made up from Jimanji's perspective. However, the netizens watched with relish and continued to attack Tanggua, the plagiarist, on the internet. Dear host, Jimanji wrote an article to slander you. When it's almost ready, we'll put up the surveillance video. She had to give him a slap in the face to feel better. On the other side, a dream saw that she had also been criticized. Her round little face frowned, moved her fingers and casually commented, trash. Then someone replied, yes, Tanggua is trash. When Yumeng saw this, she was especially unhappy. She replied to the other party, I said that the blogger who wrote this blog post is trash. This sentence seemed to have ignited the firecrackers in the netizens, and they began to shift their positions to criticize You Can Dream. Yumeng looked at the curses that filled the sky and couldn't help but say, morons! It was all rubbish. Then, she went to Tanggua's Weibo and took a look. She found that many people were scolding her, but she didn't seem to have done anything. The most recent post seemed to be a little weak. The general idea was that she didn't steal other people's work. Her work was indeed her own idea. In the face of all the evidence, her explanation was very weak. The peak. Chapter 37:14. The evidence was right in front of her, but she still chose to believe that Tanggua didn't steal someone else's work. As for why, she didn't know. Perhaps it was her intuition, but she was sure that Tanggua wasn't that kind of person. She couldn't stand Jimanji, so she made a call. A voice sounded from the other end. Miss, are you going home? No. Help me deal with some things and create some trouble. Before Tangwa knew it, someone was already planning to deal with Jimanji. When Tangwa returned home, Father Tang and Mother Tang were surprised by her sudden return. Xiaogua, why did you suddenly come back today? Mrs. Tang asked. I don't think it's because you miss us. Yeah, this girl only knows how to write songs every day. She has long forgotten about us. How could that be? I've always had you in my heart, Dad, Mom. Tangwa sat down. I'll be living at home from now on. When the two of them heard what she said, their gazes fell on her. Father Tang stopped reading the newspaper and asked in a serious tone. Girl, did you run into some kind of trouble? Oh my God, old man. Someone said that our daughter stole someone else's work. Mrs. Tang didn't go online much, but she knew how to. She felt that something must have happened to Tangwa. So she immediately went online to search and saw the news. In addition, the article that Jimanji posted, and the bullshit in it made Mrs. Tang angry. But soon the article disappeared, as if it had been censored. Mrs. Tang couldn't help but clap her hands in joy. The two of them actually had their daughter at an old age. Tangwa was in her early 20s, while they were already in their 60s. But because they took good care of themselves, they still looked young. Old man, hurry up and get someone to help our family's girl suppress those rumors. Do you think we don't know our family's girl? How could she be like that? There must be some misunderstanding. Mr. Tang nodded in agreement. The industry is very complicated. She must have touched someone's interests. I already told her to use her family's connections if she could, but she insisted. She's just a songwriter, so there's no need. Tangwa quickly stopped them. Dad, Mom, this matter is more complicated than we thought. Don't waste that money. Let's wait for things to ferment. I have my own plans for everything. I will settle everything one by one. Girl, can it really work? Father Tang was still a little worried. Actually, no matter what others say, it won't affect us. Your mother and I were just worried that you wouldn't be able to handle the gossip. Your mother and I believe in you, and are on your side. Hearing Tangwa's affirmation, Father Tang nodded his head. Okay, I'll let you handle this matter on your own. As long as you don't mind the rumors, just let me know if you need any help. Dad, Mom, I want to start a company. It will burn a lot of money in the early stages. You can invest some shares in it. Since both of them had spoken, Tangwa did not hold back. This company would not lose money anyway. Tangwa wanted to start her own company. Of course, the two of them had to support her. Even if his daughter wanted to take some money to play, it was fine. They were just afraid that the current situation would affect her and make her unhappy. In the current online world, people would hurt people. So if there was no need to, they basically wouldn't look at it. If there was any important news, their subordinates would inform them. On the second day after returning home, Tangwa was sorting out her assets. At the same time, she asked someone to sell everything in the house and turn it into cash. Her own assets, including her savings, would be worth about 200 million yuan after selling them off. In addition, Father Tang and Mother Tang each supported her with 100 million. To her, this was a pretty good start. As for the things on the internet, she did not pay attention to them at all. As long as she did not care, with her situation, it would not affect her. Peak. Chapter 37:15. The reason why the original owner was affected was because she cared too much. After all, who wouldn't care about something that she had painstakingly created? Tangwa didn't start a company directly with the money. She asked the system to select some online culture companies. After all, Kongan had stolen most of the comics, songs and scripts. At present, Kongan had only been reborn for a year, so he hadn't stolen too many things. He mainly stole a xianxia that was being serialized. Of the two comics, one was still being serialized and the other had already ended. As for the songs and lyrics, he had already started on her. Next, Kong In would probably release many of the original owner's songs and lyrics. She had all these in her memory. Thinking of this, Tangwa wrote down all the songs and lyrics that night. Every once in a while, she would put some of them on her private website. No one could enter her private website without her permission. But time couldn't change anything that was published on the website. As long as Kong En dared to use her songs, he would be doomed the day she opened her private website. Under the system's selection, she soon found a cheap and operating website. Tang Gua invested money to buy it. Buying the company didn't cost much money. The main thing was to open up channels and advertise. Before that, she had to attract a group of writers to write for her. After all, writers were the foundation of a website. At the same time, she opened a comic page on the website. From the beginning, she had planned to burn money. If she didn't have enough money, she could just earn some quick money. She had already renamed the company, and it was called Dream Website. It meant that the majority of comic writers and writers could come here to pursue their dreams. Integrating the company, recruiting talents, drawing up new contracts, how to treat and manage the previous writers well. Every problem was enough to make Tang Gua very busy. Luckily, she had a very capable assistant, Xiao Tongzi. With Xiao Tongzi's help, she could pick the most suitable talents to help manage the company. People in the industry all thought that Tang Gua was a rich tycoon. That was why she dared to burn money like this. Tang Gua felt that from the current situation, there were many ways to burn money. So she had to ask the system to invest in stocks. System: speculate in stocks and earn money to support the host. After arranging the benefits for the company's employees and authors, the next step was to open up the channels. Tang Gua didn't have to worry too much about this. As long as she had the money, it wouldn't be difficult for her to get her group of capable people to open up channels. Of course, advertisements were also necessary. For a time, Dream Station was known by everyone in the comics circle and author circle. Seeing so many benefits, countless people wanted to test the waters. The editors were going crazy from reviewing the manuscripts. However, the benefits given by the boss were very good. It was as if they were doing charity. No matter how tired they were, they had to work harder and sign a batch of good authors and comics artists. All the employees of the Dream Building Station were as busy as spinning tops. It was as if they had inexhaustible energy, spinning nonstop. Sometimes when he was too busy, the system would help him review his manuscripts. After all, it was a system that had transmigrated through many worlds, so it still had a sense of aesthetics. Not only could he review manuscripts, but he could also give reasonable opinions. This made many authors feel that the editor of the Dream Building website was very skilled. Vertex. Chapter 37:16. When Tang Gua saw the reaction on the forum, she gave the system an additional position, chief editor. System: he really didn't steal the chief editor position on purpose. A long time later, there would be a rumor on the Dream Building website. It was said that the chief editor of their website would never show his face. He would only assign work through their work accounts. After the chief editor received the manuscripts, he would distribute them to them after reviewing them. They were sincerely convinced by the chief editor, because the authors who received the manuscripts from the chief editor would at least have a small amount of fame, if not a big hit. She had employees, authors, and artists. Channels were gradually opened, and the website began to operate normally. Tang Gua was burning money like crazy. Many people in the industry couldn't understand. Tang Gua was too lazy to explain. The next step was for her, the talent scout, to find the author of the 1,000-mile horse treasure trove and bring it back. Madam Host, all the information about them is here. There are also some future authors who are younger and haven't had the idea of writing yet. In addition, those who were caught in the storm are now waiting for Madam Host to save them. Tang Gua looked at the information. The authors who were caught in the plagiarism storm were the author of the Xinxia novel and the authors of the 2 manga. The real author of the manga Small Alley was actually Yi Yuling. The author of the manga Spring Day was Jiyu. It was worth mentioning that Jiyu was a talented girl who was less than 15 years old. She was very talented in drawing since she was young. When she was 14 years old, she started to create the healing and warmth manga Spring Day, which touched the hearts of thousands of girls. However, the manga had only been serialized for 2 issues before it was pointed out as plagiarism. From that day onwards, she was questioned by her classmates. Her parents didn't understand her and thought that she was embarrassing them. The originally talented girl's life was gloomy from then on. There was only contempt and doubt in her life. No one encouraged her and no one believed in her. She lost all her courage and ability to continue writing. Even her grades plummeted. At this time, she was facing the risk of dropping out of school. According to her current grades, she might not even be able to enter high school. Tangwa arrived at Jiyu's school. It was around the time when school was over. She waited at the school gate for a long time before she saw Jiyu in the photo. This girl had thick bangs, carried a school bag, and wore a rigid school uniform. She didn't walk like other students, with her head held high and her chest puffed out, brimming with youthfulness. On the contrary, her body was lifeless. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on the school gate, making many students' faces turn red. However, this setting sun was unable to shine on Xiaoyu's face. It was as if she could only bury her head forever, unable to lift it up. Step by step, she walked slowly in the direction of her home. She had only taken 2 steps when someone called out to her. "Hey, look, that's a plagiarist. She's plagiarizing Kong En's work." "I'm reading that comic too. She's just a junior high school student. How could she draw such a good comic? She must have liked it so much that she copied it and uploaded it to other websites. Look at her results now. They're not even as good as mine. I think she copied other people's results in the past." Hearing this, Jiyu walked away quickly, as if she wanted to escape from this place. Tangwa followed them all the way, but the other party didn't seem to notice. Vertex. Chapter 37:17. She found that Jiyu didn't go home. Instead, she found an empty seat in the park, took out a notebook and pen, and silently wrote and drew there. She drew so seriously that she didn't notice that someone was watching behind her. After a long time, she looked at the comic in the notebook, and her originally lifeless eyes turned red. She turned on her phone and opened the latest chapter of Spring Day. Looking at the drawing on it, she found that it was exactly the same as what she had just drawn. Her face instantly turned pale. Obviously, these were things that she came up with herself. Why were they always one step ahead and serialized on the comic reading software? It's drawn very well. Tangwa's sudden voice scared Jiyu stiff. She quickly turned off her phone and was about to crush the drawing on the notebook, but was stopped by Tangwa. "It's drawn so well. How can you destroy it?" Jiyu didn't speak. She silently put the notebook in her school bag, turned around and went home. Tangwa followed Jiyu to her neighborhood and began to see the cold treatment Jiyu received at home through the system's vision. For several days, Tangwa paid attention to Jiyu's movements, because in the plot, the girl would eventually not be able to bear all this and choose to commit suicide. It was a pity that such a young life was gone because of Kong En's greed. Finally, on this day, the place Jiyu went to was no longer the park, but the bridge. Below the bridge was the river. If anyone jumped down, there was almost no chance of survival. Jiyu. When Jiyu heard this name, she subconsciously turned her head. This was the pen name she gave herself. Jiyu. It was a homonym for healing. Although she was a good child and an excellent student in the eyes of others since she was a child, her life was not happy. Instead, she bore pressure that many people did not bear. It was mainly from her parents. Her parents hoped that their daughter would become a phoenix every day, which gave her a heavy burden. The reason why she created a healing comic like Spring Day was that this was the world of her dreams. Only here did she feel happy. However, when the comic was serialized for a few issues, it was exposed that she had plagiarized the work of others. She racked her brains to come up with this. She was doubted by others, not understood by her parents, and even thought that she was a disgrace. Her classmates had changed from worshipping her to disgust. The world around her was filled with mockery and ridicule. Without spring, she could no longer feel the sunlight and could not be healed. It could be said that this matter had destroyed her hope of living, as well as her courage to explore the sunlight. I've analyzed the comics drawn by you and Kong En. Although they look the same, there are some differences in the details. Tangwa said, "Every stroke of your painting is more detailed. The clothes and hair accessories of the characters are all meticulous, right? I realized that between the two of you, she omitted some details and even changed some." Jiyu finally turned around and said in a hoarse voice, The pink hairpin was painted during school spare time, which means that she's in a good mood. I don't wear a hair clip. I draw it at home. My parents don't like me doing these beautiful hair accessories. The bracelet was drawn in the park. Here, no one will disturb me. I won't be urged to do homework by my parents. The teachers won't pick me to answer questions frequently, and I won't be praised by the teachers. At the same time, I won't be envied by my classmates. Vertex. Chapter 37:18. I believe you. You didn't plagiarize Kang Eun's works. These are all created by you. Ji Yu gently pursed her lower lip and quickly lowered her head. But what I drew is the same as hers. The same must be plagiarism. Then why did you plagiarize and not her? Ji Yu said stubbornly. She published the serialization before me. Ji Yu, do you still want to draw comics? Draw what you like. You're standing in a dangerous position now. Are you planning to abandon this world? I don't think it's worth it. You haven't proved how good you are yet. Why should you let those rumors defeat you? Don't you feel a little unwilling to abandon this wonderful world? Why don't you try to defeat those rumors, fulfill your dream, and prove your excellence? As long as your inspiration continues, you will create one excellent comic after another. Can I? Of course. Tanghua took out a business card. I'm the boss of Dream Station. Seeing that you're a talent, I can't bear to see you give up the world, so I've decided to sign you. If you're willing, take this business card. As for your creation, I'll arrange for someone to come and communicate with you, and give you a space to create alone. I guarantee that no one will disturb you. In the darkness, a ray of light suddenly shone in, and a hand reached out, telling her to hold on tight and take her to find the light. Not many people would refuse. Ji Yu was like this. She took the business card and held it tightly. Finally, she raised her head and looked at Tanghua with a pair of hopeful and particularly clean eyes. Will you really help me? Of course, you're a talent, and will help me make a lot of money in the future. But you can rest assured that I won't treat you badly. According to the benefits of all platforms, I have my own platform, 55 points. Ji Yu emphasized. I just want to prove myself. Money is not important. Money is still very important. Isn't it good to have the best of both worlds while proving yourself and getting money? Money can buy a lot of small dresses and small hairpins. You don't have to ask your parents for them. Ji Yu was confused and replied. Okay. It seemed to be good to have money. She could buy the computer she liked. Now she was still drawing by herself. If she used a computer, wouldn't it be better to draw on a board? It's getting late. Go home. I'll get someone to make the arrangements for you tomorrow. Remember, what you need to do next is to keep creating. You can't stop for a moment. Only in this way can you be ahead of the plagiarists. Ji Yu didn't understand what she meant, but she was very happy that someone believed her. She walked with the wind. You've been watching for so long. Are you done? Tanghua turned around, and her gaze fell on a young man. The young man walked towards Tanghua and said with a smile, I'm sorry. I thought you were a human trafficker at first. System, you want to die? Later I found out that it wasn't. I almost called the police. The man couldn't help but laugh. You're a good person. You saved a girl who almost jumped off the bridge. Nice to meet you. My name is Hua Yan. I'm a scriptwriter. The man extended his bony hand. Tanghua shook his hand. Hua Yan. Tanghua pondered for a moment. Wasn't this the unlucky screenwriter who was caught by Kang Eun? At that time, when the matter came out, Hua Yan was indeed caught in the plagiarism storm. At that time, Kang Eun's power was already established. Even someone like Hua Yan couldn't wash away his suspicion. The peak. Chapter 37:19. It was mainly because Kang Eun had released his work before Hua Yan. In the end, Hua Yan retired from the industry, but his life was better than others. After all, he was not only a screenwriter, but also a young master. However, with Kang Eun as a foil, this young master, who was supposed to be the nation's young master, had become a plagiarist with a tarnished reputation. It was a little hard to explain. It wasn't that Hua Yan didn't suspect something was wrong with Kang Eun, but he couldn't find any evidence. Moreover, Kang Eun had so many people protecting him, so he couldn't do anything to him even if he hated him. In the end, He was the unlucky one to go against Kong Un. This made Hua Yin very angry. Why? Do you know me? Hua Yin had a pair of beautiful peach blossom eyes. He smiled. I know. You must have watched the TV series that I co-wrote, right? Speaking of which, my name often appears in the catalog, and I'm quite famous in the industry. It's normal that you know me. I never look at the catalog cast list or crew when I watch TV series, Tanggua said straightforwardly. I'm just curious. Who's called Hua Yin and who's called Xiaoyu? I think you look a little familiar. Hua Yin took out his phone and quickly found the answer. He held his chin. So, you're the one who wrote the songs for Zhuijing. After the last time, you disappeared for a few months. I've listened to your songs and they're very good. It's a pity that you left the industry. If possible, I can introduce you to the director. In the future, you can help me write songs for the TV series that I co-wrote. Tanggua looked up at Hua Yin. Although he said it casually, she could feel that he was serious. I dare to write songs, but who dares to sing or use them? If I want to participate, I won't change my name. I'll still use the name Tanggua. I'm me. Maybe I can try. I think you're a very talented person. But I already have a dark history. As long as my name is involved, the netizens will definitely boycott the TV series. And even the actors, writers, and directors of the series. When the internet water army went crazy, it was very scary. Although it's not that serious, my intuition tells me that there must be a misunderstanding last time. In other words, I don't think you're a plagiarist. They've already published that song first. And now there are several other songs coming out one after another. The evidence is conclusive, and I have no way to refute it. Hua Yin shook his head and looked in the direction where Ziyu had disappeared. You were just comforting that little girl and saying that you believed in her. I remember you saying that if it's exactly the same, it must be plagiarism. But the plagiarist might not be the little girl. I'll say the same thing to you. You don't have to save me. I won't jump off the bridge. I know. I just want to say that I believe in you. Hua Yin didn't understand why he trusted her so much. Perhaps it was because of what he had just seen. Such a person, with her confidence, tone, and appearance. How could she do such a thing if she could say those words? It's getting late. Do you want me to give you a ride? You don't seem to be driving. In order to follow Ziyu, Tanggua did not drive. Thus she did not refuse. System. As a system, he already understood and saw through everything. In the car, Tanggua suddenly asked, Hua Yin, have you written a new script? I'm still thinking about it. Actually, as a screenwriter, there must be many ideas in my mind. If there aren't thousands, there are at least hundreds. Of course, I want to create a big script independently. Peak. Chapter 37:20. However, I'm still in charge of some script adaptations now, so I don't have time to do my own. I really didn't steal Kong Un's work, Tanggua suddenly said. I said before, I believe your words. Hua Yin smiled at Tanggua. Although he didn't seem to be in tune, his tone was very serious. In fact, he was not a person who only listened to one side of the story. But for some reason, he believed what she said. It was really strange. Hua Yin, if you have any good ideas, I suggest you write down all the scripts in advance and save them on a private website. Save a few more and keep them for a while. Tanggua tilted her head and said, just in case, if you have any inspiration, write more and put it all on a private website. With a time record, it won't be easy to get into some trouble in the future. Hua Yin laughed out loud. I suspect that you're reminding me that someone wants to steal my brain. Then in this world, is there really such a supernatural ability that can steal other people's brains? Maybe there is. Make a record just in case. It's not a loss. Well, I've been convinced by you. When I go back tonight, I'll move all my brains to a private website. If I get into such a trouble like you in the future, I'll open a private website to prove my innocence and turn the tables on the other party. If it's useful, I'll definitely thank you properly. First, tell me how you're going to thank me and give me half of my assets. How about that? You're really greedy. You want half of my assets as soon as you open your mouth. Are you a hungry tiger from the mountains? System. Host fight back. Someone actually called you a tiger. If you want to live, hand over your assets. Well, if what you said is true, not to mention half of my assets, I'll give you all of it, okay? Hua Yin didn't think that what he said to Tang Guo would happen, even if he believed that Tang Guo wasn't someone who would steal other people's fruits of labor. System. Host is very powerful. You easily got all the other party's assets. You're rich. However, there didn't seem to be any difference from left hand to right hand. Oh, I was happy for nothing. The next day, Tang Guo arranged for someone to rent a house outside Jiyu's school, and specially arranged for an editor to take care of Jiyu. The arranged editor was currently looking at Jiyu with a dumbfounded expression. The boss actually said that the little girl in front of him needed to be taken care of one-on-one. He even said that she was a future money tree and had to be taken good care of. In the future, when Jiyu earned profits here, he would give her 5 points. Only when the young girl started writing did the editor take her seriously. Could it be that the boss wasn't doing charity, but was serious about it? However, as an editor, this was probably the first time she had to take care of a manga author one-on-one. She even had to prepare meals for him. Was she an editor or a nanny? However, the salary was really high, and there were very few things to do. In the future, there would be those 5 points. Even if there weren't those 5 points, it would still be pretty good. God, she actually fell into the boss's pie. What happened to her dreams? But wasn't her dream to make money? After arranging Jiyu, Tang Guo went to find her second horse. It was still a manga author. It was Yi Yuling, the author of the gloomy dark manga Small Alley. Small Alley has been over for a long time. Before the host came over, Yi Yuling was already being boycotted by fans because of the plagiarism scandal. In addition, she's in an environment where she's half crazy but not half crazy. Her situation is especially miserable, and she was sent to a mental hospital by her family. Peak. Chapter 37-21. Yi Yuling was a somewhat famous manga author. Unlike Jiyu, who was a fledgling, she only needed one more phenomenal work to become popular. Originally, Yi Yuling relied on Small Alley to become popular. From then on, she reached the peak of her life and got out of her predicament. It could be said that Kong'an took away everything from Yi Yuling when he took away Small Alley. After the scandal, Yi Yuling told everyone that she didn't plagiarize, but almost no one believed her. Her boyfriend broke up with her. Her friends stayed away from her because of this. Her mother died early, and her father was an alcoholic. He married a stepmother and gave birth to a younger brother. One could imagine what kind of life she was living. Her father didn't care about her at all. She relied on the money she earned from drawing comics to go to art school. Originally, after Small Alley became popular, she should have graduated from university and successfully gotten rid of this twisted family. However, Kong'an's appearance destroyed all of this. After the plagiarism scandal, Yi Yuling couldn't recover from the setback. The pressure from the outside world and her family made her already unhealthy mental state even more unhealthy. Simply put, she suffered from mental illness. Because of this terrible incident, the school even persuaded Yi Yuling to leave. After all, this matter had a great impact. Yi Yuling's school was a famous school. If they didn't expel such a bad student, they wouldn't be able to explain it to society. If they covered up for Yi Yuling, it would have a bad impact on the school's reputation. Therefore, all of Yi Yuling's hopes were shattered. Yi Yuling didn't have a good time when she returned home. In order to get all of Yi Yuling's royalties, her stepmother colluded with her father and sent her to a mental hospital. Yi Yuling, who originally only suffered from mental illness, really became half crazy and half stupid after staying in the mental hospital for a long time. If they wanted to get Yi Yuling out, they had to ask her guardian. For this reason, Tang Guo first checked the weaknesses of Yi Yuling's father and stepmother. If she went to these two people, she might be asked for too much. She didn't want to give them a single cent. In the end, she found out that Yi Yuling's father was not only an alcoholic, but also a gambling addict. Therefore, Tang Guo went to the legal casino that Yi Yuling's father often went to. The people who came here were all kinds of people. But before she could take 2 steps, she was stopped by someone. "Why are you here?" Hua Yin asked curiously. This is not a good place, but if you have spare cash, you can still play a little. I'm here to do something. Hua Yin automatically walked to Tangua's side. He leaned closer and whispered, "What's the matter?" Tangua glanced at Hua Yan's dark circles and couldn't help but ask, "Your dark circles are so heavy. It seems like your nightlife is very rich. What are you thinking?" "I'm a clean and honest man, and I don't have any nightlife. It's all because I listened to what you said and thought it made sense. For the past few nights, I've been working hard on the script and listening to you. Part by part, I've uploaded it all to my private website." Tangua did not expect the other party to be so decisive. As such, Hua Yin had already made a record of his script. If Kong'an were to use Hua Yan's script in the future, they would be doomed. She remembered that in the plot, Hua Yin had said that he had conceived the script many years ago. However, there was only a manuscript and no time record, so there was no way to prove his innocence. "By the way, you haven't said what you're here for. It doesn't seem appropriate for a young lady to come to such an occasion." Vertex. Chapter 37:22. I found a fine horse and planned to sign a contract with her. But now she's in some trouble. I have to help her solve this problem before I can invite her money tree back. Hua Yin held his chin. I asked around. You seem to have bought an online company and even opened a comic page, right? You seem to have a lot of channels and are burning money every day. Hey, you're quite rich. You should have burned a few $100 million in the past few months, right? There's investment, there's income. Aren't you afraid of losing money by putting all your eggs in one basket? I'll lose and earn, but I believe in my judgment. I can definitely make money. So, I'm here to invite the money tree back. Hua Yin felt that Tangua was very interesting. The more he got close to her, the more he couldn't help but get close to her. She was very stingy with her words, but when she burned money, she didn't feel pity at all. He also checked the company under Tangua's name and found that it is indeed profitable. He had analyzed it, and the possibility of losing money was not big. The main reason was that this website was well run and had many channels. The works under it were blooming, and they were very friendly to the authors. It attracted many authors. Hua Yin, do me a favor later. How about it? Hua Yin was interested. Of course I'm willing. What can I do for you, beautiful lady? Hey, do you see that drunkard who's a little drunk? Pretend to be a gambler and play with him alone. Lose more money to him. Let him win more first and then win it all back in the end. Do you really believe in my gambling skills? It's not that I believe in your gambling skills. It's just that he looks so bad. He doesn't have any luck at all. When you play with this kind of person, you just have to bet the opposite. When the time comes, you just have to give in, and he'll be able to win. Hua Yin. Then do I get a reward for helping you? After Hua Yin finished speaking, he quickly added, At least treat me to a meal? God knew why he wanted to treat her to a meal to make up for it. He was especially afraid that she would think that he was taking advantage of her. Forget it, a meal was not bad anyway. Okay, help me with this, and I'll treat you to a meal. Let's go and exchange chips. After exchanging chips, Tangua started to let Hua Yin burn money again. He wanted to show Yi Yuling's father how much he had lost. How unlucky. Why do I keep losing today? In order to look more realistic, Hua Yin even unbuttoned a button on his shirt, revealing his delicate collarbone. He looked sloppy, and there was even a cigarette in his mouth. The way he played cards, it was obvious at first glance that he was serious. In fact, Hua Yin rarely played such games. However, he was still a scriptwriter, and often mixed in with the crew. Occasionally, when there were not enough extras as the scriptwriter, he had to go up and fill in the blanks. Therefore, as a handsome scriptwriter, he would often fill in some small roles. The director looked at his face and felt that it was a pity. Why was this guy just a scriptwriter? If he was an actor, he would definitely become famous if he trained well. Who else wants to bet 10 rounds with this young master? This young master doesn't believe that I can't win 1 out of 10 rounds. I'll do it. I'll bet with you. Yi Yuling's father finally sat in front of Hua Yin. When Hua Yin saw so many people watching, he suddenly felt like he was the god of gamblers. He turned around and said to Tangua, Fire. Vertex. Chapter 37:23. After he finished speaking, he felt that something was wrong. He had played such a role before, so he was a little immersed in the scene. After he finished speaking, his face was a little stiff. Tang Guo was very cooperative and helped Hua Yin light his cigarette. Seeing her smiling face, Hua Yan's legs trembled. He didn't know why he had such a strange reaction. Don't be distracted, Tang Guo said softly. Hua Yin finally came back to his senses. Alright, let's do it first. Hua Yin secretly glanced at Tang Guo. Seeing that she wasn't angry and was sitting beside him obediently, as if she was his female companion, he suddenly wanted to win the gambler in front of him. However, he restrained himself and started to help Tang Guo seriously. After a while, chips were piled up in front of Yi Yuling's father. Are you still going to play? Hua Yin took out a card and handed it to Tang Guo. Change 5 million into chips. I'm not going to let this place go today. Yi Yuling's father was very tempted when he saw the 5 million chips in front of Hua Yin. He gritted his teeth and said, Fine, let's continue. If you lose it all, you can't go back on your words. What this young master has is money. What does this amount to? It's just spending for one night. Come on, old gambler. Let's see if you can win all my money today. This gambling lasted until late at night. Yi Yuling's father had already won 5 million. However, Hua Yin didn't believe it and took out another card. This time it was 10 million. Yi Yuling's father fell for it. However, from this time onwards he kept losing. He lost all the chips on the table. By dawn, he still owed Hua Yin 10 million. It seems that I'm not a bad gambler. Hua Yin walked in front of the pale-faced gambler and stretched out his slender hand. Old gambler, how are you going to give me 10 million? I don't have it. Young Master Hua, how about giving me another chance? I can make a comeback. I've already given you many chances. Today, you can either give me 10 million or break your hand. Choose one. The old gambler was so scared that he quickly withdrew his hand. His face was full of bitterness, and he didn't know what to do. However, his eyes were crazy. He went around asking people if they were willing to lend him money. Of course, no one cared. They all knew this old gambler. He might have lost his gambling luck in the first half of the night. The money that he had lent out could not be recovered. Old gambler, give me the money. If you don't have the money, then break your hand. Hua Yin looked at the knife in front of him and glanced at Tang Guo from the corner of his eyes. Seeing that she was still smiling, he took the knife and patted the old gambler's face with the back of the knife. You want your hand? Yes. Young Master Hua, I don't want to lose my hand. I really don't want to become disabled. You, give me another chance. I will definitely get 10 million, I promise. Promise my ass. Do you think you can take out 10 million? Young Master Hua, I can't take it out. What if I'm lucky tomorrow night and can win 10 million? Cut the crap. Either you give me the money or you break your hand. When the old gambler thought that he would lose his hand, he was so scared that he pissed his pants. Unknowingly, a large puddle of water formed on the ground, which made the people around him feel disgusted. Don't you have a son or daughter? Let them help you pay back the money. Hua Yin felt that it was time and said to the old gambler, My son is still young. He's in primary school. I don't have money. Chapter 37:24. What about your daughter? Is she an adult? Is she pretty? Hua Yin knew it was a line, but he couldn't help but look at Tang Guo's face when he said it. Tang Guo said, If you can't afford it, let your daughter do it. If she's pretty, young Master Hua might give you a chance. Pretty. My daughter is very pretty. Okay, then bring your daughter over, and let me take a look. The boss of the casino had to ask after the gambler lost money. He specially arranged for someone to watch over the old gambler, and let him pick up his daughter. Young Master Hua, I'll bring my daughter over soon. Yi Yuling's father was very scared. He didn't make any guesses, and went to the mental hospital to pick up Yi Yuling. When Yi Yuling was sent over, she was in a daze. She looked at the people around her in a daze. Hua Yin was very trustworthy. He left with his people, and didn't cause trouble for the other party. Back in the car, Hua Yin sat in the front passenger seat and said to Tang Guo, How was it? Are you satisfied with my work? How can I not be satisfied with young Master Hua's work? Does young Master Hua come to such events often? That fire was really immersive. Hua Yin thought he had foresight. Fortunately, he didn't drive himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to hold the steering wheel and get into an accident. Not at all. I've been in the crew for a long time and can imitate a little. For a screenwriter like me, when there aren't enough extras, I have to do it myself. Everything before was just an act. Don't take it seriously. Actually, I don't come to events like today. If I do, I'll come with other people. I don't sit at the table. But the way you picked up the cards was very professional, Tang Gua said seriously. The way you picked up the cards was like an old gambler. Hua Yin explained. Previously, there was a problem with the group performance. The director asked me to play a handsome young master who likes to gamble. At that time, I looked okay and couldn't find anyone else. The way I picked up the cards was very familiar. It was trained. It wasn't his fault. It was the director who was too stingy. He couldn't bear to spare 2 extras. Without them, he let the people behind the scenes take over. The director was a scammer. It wasn't his fault. He really wasn't addicted to gambling. Her condition doesn't seem too good. Should we go to the hospital first? Don't worry. Stay with her for a few days and wait until her condition stabilizes. Tang Gua had already prepared Yi Yuling's place. Hua Yin sent Tang Gua to the destination and asked in confusion, I don't understand. I heard that the employees of your company are discussing whether their boss, who is you, is doing charity. Now I think you might really be doing charity. Tang Gua wanted to say that she really wasn't. She would really earn a lot of money in the future. The people she picked up were all future IP big shots. As long as these big shots were all created by her, then her money would be endless. She was the one who nurtured the big shots, so she felt proud of herself if she told others about it. As for Kong In, who had stolen the fruits of others' labor, he could only wait to be devoured. Her name is Yi Yuling. She is a slightly famous manga author. Because she was caught in the scandal of plagiarizing Kong In, coupled with the pressure from her family, society and school, she ended up in this situation. Tang Gua looked at Yi Yuling who was sitting on the sofa in a daze. After knowing what happened to her, I think she can still be saved. About plagiarizing Kong In again? Even if Hua Yin was a fool, he could sense that something was wrong. Top. Chapter 3725. That's strange. What does Kong In do? Why are people from all walks of life copying her? It's said that Kong In is now a high school student, currently in her 2nd year. Since her 1st year in high school, she has been shining brightly and seems to be outstanding in everything she does. Popular xianxia author, well-known manga author, genius lyricist and composer. Hearing Tang Gua talking about Kong In's achievements as if they were treasures, Hua Yin felt that it was a bit fake. The other party was a high school student, the most stressful time in her life. Not only was she a serial, but she was also a manga serial. Compared to manga, it was more time-consuming. Not only that, she was also a lyricist and composer. Her academic performance shouldn't be that good, right? Hua Yin asked tentatively. Although he felt that Kong In's situation was a bit different from what he had guessed, he still couldn't help but ask this question. He was looking forward to hearing such an answer. Otherwise, what kind of monster was the other party? Tang Gua shook her head. Her academic performance is very good. She is always first in her grade. With a mobile phone that could surf the internet, it was really easy to search for the type of questions that Kong In needed. Moreover, some of the test papers and questions of some large-scale exams could be found on the internet. It was really not strange that Kong In was first in her grade every time. Although there were perverts who were first in their grade every time, Kong In was definitely not that kind of person. Before her rebirth, her grades were in the lower middle of the class. Even if she was a peerless genius, she couldn't improve so quickly. Then she's really amazing. Hua Yin didn't know what to say. Say, is there really a superpower in this world that can steal other people's brains? Kong In's experience was too strange, and it had already made Hua Yin suspicious. Because of this, he decided that when he went back, he must transfer all the ideas and scripts in his mind to his private website to make a record. If there really was a superpower that could steal other people's brains, wouldn't he also be caught in the plagiarism storm? The other party was earlier than him, and there was no way to prove her innocence. I'll go back first. Remember, you still owe me a meal. Remember to call me when you're free. As Huayan spoke, he took out his mobile phone. Give me your phone number. I'm afraid you'll go back on your word. The system obviously wanted the phone number, but this seemed to be what the host wanted. Now the two of them could exchange contact information as they wished, and it was done openly. I'll call you when I'm free. Tangwa gave him her phone number. Soon, an unknown number called her, and she saved it. Seeing this, Huayan bid farewell and left. After a while, the editor that Tangwa arranged for Yi Yuling came over. This editor was poached by Tangwa with money. This was Yi Yuling's former editor. From what Tangwa knew, this editor had always believed that Yi Yuling was innocent. After all, Yi Yuling was groomed by her. She didn't believe that Yi Yuling plagiarized. Moreover, during the creation of Small Alley, he had discussed it with her many times. It could be said that he had completed it with her company. But, in the face of all the evidence, even if she believed Yi Yuling was innocent, there was no way she could prove it. All she could do was watch as Yi Yuling got caught up in the storm, and the serialized Small Alley was removed from the internet. Boss, Yuling's condition doesn't look too good. Can she still compose? Vertex. Chapter 37-26. Looking at Yi Yuling's dazed expression, Wu Qing's eyes reddened, and she couldn't hold back her tears. Was this still the dazzling and talented girl she knew back then? In the past, when Yi Yuling discussed the plot with her, she would always be in high spirits, like a ray of light. She was never as gloomy as she was now. Whether or not we can continue to create will depend on whether we can wake her up or not. Tangguo was confident that she could wake Yi Yuling up. However, it would take some time. Wu Qing, your task now is to stay here and accompany her. When she wakes up, you have to tell her your thoughts. You are her most trusted and closest editor. As long as you believe in her, she will definitely be able to pull herself together. Boss, don't worry. I will do my best. Even if she didn't have the generous salary from her boss, she was still willing to do this. She really couldn't bear to see such a brilliant person disappear just like that. Tangwa left the neighborhood and returned to the car. The driver drove her home. Tongzi, how's the group? I still can't get in. However, according to the data analysis, the group is still stable. The group shouldn't have collapsed. As for when we can get in, I have no way of predicting. All right. Pay attention to the group, and let me know if there's any news, Tangwa said. Who's the next target? The author of that epic Xianxia novel White Sage. White Sage was originally a high school student. His grades were bad, but he had a dream of writing since he was young. When he was in his second year of high school, he felt that he wasn't cut out for studying, so he started to write. When others were in class, he would write. He used a handwriting board. At first, he would go to an internet cafe on Fridays and type out all the words. When he serialized it to about 50,000 words, more and more people started to read it. When it reached 100,000 words, a slightly better recommendation appeared, and more people read it. He even received a lot of tips. He didn't even charge for it, and his monthly income was over 10,000 yuan. This aroused White Sage's desire to write. It's just that the heavens don't listen to people's wishes. Just when White Sage thought that he was about to embark on a broad path, and had a way out even if he didn't study, he received a report that he had plagiarized someone else's work. The system slowly told him about White Sage's experience. The other party published earlier than him, and the number of words in the serial was also more than his. Therefore, this was already a copy. The plot was very serious. The work was taken down on the same day, and the website took back all the royalties. Because of this matter, Sage White has completely lost all hope. His grades are also terrible. This incident had a huge impact on him. His family had been hunted down because of it, and the situation at his school had also been exposed. Because he was a bad student, the school eventually persuaded him to drop out. After dropping out of school, Sage White didn't want to continue studying. After all, he didn't think he was cut out for it. Currently, Sage White is working as a waiter in a hotel, barely making a living. Find out his address. We'll go look for him tomorrow. The next day, Tang Guo went to see Yi Yuling first. Yi Yuling's condition seemed to have stabilized a little. Yi Yuling's problem was much more serious than Ji Yu's. It couldn't be rushed, and could only be done slowly. Then she went to the hotel where White Sage worked. The hotel where White Sage worked was a luxurious hotel. Peak. Chapter 37:27. Perhaps it was because he was born handsome, so he became the hotel's doorman. He was responsible for opening the doors and carrying the luggage of the guests. However, White Saint's situation was not as good as he had imagined. The old staff of the hotel often bullied him. He was not a person who was willing to endure, but his family's situation was not very good at the moment. His father was seriously ill. Although it was not an illness that would kill him immediately, it was an illness that would kill him if he did not have money. For the sake of living, he could only endure the bullying of his colleagues and the humiliation of the guests. He lowered his strictness to the minimum and dragged out an ignoble existence. There were a few doormen. There were often luxury cars parked at the door. Before White Saint could go up to receive them, he would be received by his colleagues. After all, the guests who drove luxury cars were very generous and would give them a lot of tips. For example, the guests who came by taxi and drove ordinary cars would not be so generous. The tips would be 5 or 10 yuan at most. If the guests drove sports cars and brought women, they would be even more generous. They would usually give 100 yuan. If they were lucky, they might get a few hundred yuan. The people they liked to receive the most were those who were suddenly rich. They liked to look good in front of women. In particular, they would often ask them to help buy things and let them keep the rest of the money. White Saint also wanted to receive such guests. However, he was a newcomer. The old staff ostracized him. The guests who came often were not familiar with him. They did not let him receive them at all. Occasionally, there would be an unfamiliar guest who would be snatched away by his colleagues. Even if his guests were snatched away, White Saint could not resist. In the past 2 years, he had suffered many losses. For a small figure like him, who had no background and no power, when he suffered grievances, he could only endure it. If he showed off for a while, the only result would be that he would be fired. His father's illness had always required money. If he was fired again, White Saint would not be able to find a better place to get tips than here. If he were to be a doorman in other industries, 3,000 to 4,000 yuan a month would not be enough to treat his father's illness. He had tried to be a salesman, but he was really not cut out for it. There was no way to make the guests buy his things willingly. Because of his father's illness, he could not afford to gamble. He also did not have the time to gamble. He could only live here. In his heart, he was also looking forward to the time when he could soar into the sky. However, reality was often cruel, and he had gradually let go of that unrealistic dream. Tang Guo took a taxi and brought a suitcase with her. It was filled with a lot of things and was very heavy. After all, she was here to get in touch with Saint White. She didn't want another waiter to receive her. When the car stopped at the entrance of the hotel, she glanced at the entrance and saw many waiters waiting at the entrance. When Tang Guo arrived, she was very sure that these people all looked in her direction. The distance was a little far, and the glass at the entrance of the hotel was still a little reflective, so the guests could not see the waiter's current expressions. When White Saint saw that another person had taken a taxi over, he understood that this was his job. His colleagues would definitely not snatch it from him. Usually, customers who came by taxi would not only receive a small tip, but their luggage might also be very heavy. But White Saint didn't mind at all. He couldn't wait to have more customers like this. Even if it was 3, 5, or even 1, it would be fine. As the saying goes, many a little makes a mickle. If there were dozens or even hundreds of such customers in a day, he would earn quite a bit of income. Vertex. Chapter 37:28. His colleagues definitely didn't care about such a small amount of money, so no one snatched it from him. Therefore, just as Tang Guo was about to open the car door, White Saint was already by the car door and opened it for her with a smile. "Miss, do you have any luggage?" Tangwa got out of the car and nodded. Yes, it's in the trunk. Do you want to call another person over? It's a little heavy. It's okay. I'm strong. I still have the strength to help you carry some luggage. Tangwa smiled and nodded. She didn't force him. She knew the situation. Even if White Saint went to call someone, the other party might come over to help carry the luggage because of the hotel's face. However, White Saint would definitely be ridiculed afterwards. White Saint took out Tangwa's luggage from the trunk. It was really heavy, but he didn't complain at all. He had been working here for more than a year and had helped customers carry luggage that was heavier than Tangwa's. In his opinion, it was already very good. He could get a tip by opening the door for customers and carrying their luggage. It was better than those rich customers who came all the time, and he didn't have the chance to receive them. Today, Tangwa brought an ordinary-looking and relatively large suitcase. She was also dressed ordinarily. Other than her good looks, it was obvious that she wasn't a rich person. Therefore, when she followed White Saint in, the group of waiters at the door only smiled politely. They weren't as enthusiastic as the rich people. Tangwa didn't mind at all. She let White Saint lead her in. White Saint even asked, "Miss, have you booked a room or do you want to book it now?" "I haven't booked it yet." "Okay, then please book a room at the front desk first." White Saint brought Tangwa to the front desk and placed the suitcase beside her. He turned around and poured a glass of water for Tangwa. While helping with the procedures at the front desk, she sized up the smiling White Saint in front of her. Through the system's investigation, she had read all of White Saint's information. This big boy who had dropped out of school for 2 years used to be such an unruly person. To be able to write such an epic Xianxia novel, the author must have a Xianxia dream in his heart. He must also have an unruly, unbeatable heart that was unwilling to accept the status quo. But now she witnessed everything that happened in reality. The oppression of fate had forced this big boy to withdraw all of his sharpness. He polished himself until he looked very smooth, so that he could survive in this world. She believed that if he was given a chance, he would become a better man than before. With the experience of creating his own work, it would definitely be better than the work in the original plot. It would be deeper, more immersive, and more thought-provoking. "Miss Tang, your room is ready." "Okay, thank you." White Sage pulled Tangwa's luggage and led her to the hotel room. From the beginning to the end, he was especially serious because this was a guest that he had not easily gotten. When they arrived at the room, Tangwa opened the door and White Saint put the luggage in. Tangwa took out a stack of money from her bag and handed it to White Saint. White Saint looked at the stack of money and was a little stunned. At this moment, his mind was filled with thoughts that he had actually received a low-key rich lady. Looking at this rich lady, her entire body was ordinary. She didn't even have any jewelry, her clothes were the most ordinary in the mall, and her bag wasn't a famous brand. However, she had easily taken out such a stack of money from her bag. He silently calculated that this stack of money was at least 3,000 to 4,000 yuan. Top. Chapter 3729. Miss Tang, do you need me to deposit money for you? No, it's a tip. Tangwa could feel White Sage's mental activity. He probably didn't believe her. She handed him some more. I'm very satisfied with your service. It's rare to meet a waiter as serious as you these days, so this is your reward for your labor. This is too much. He didn't know how many guests he had to receive to have so much money. To White Saint it was really a lot. Even if he was really short of money, he didn't accept it immediately. Society forced him to put away all his sharpness. He was no longer the high school student who didn't like to study and was more ambitious than this guy 2 years ago. He began to understand that there were many unfairness in this world. There were too many people who couldn't be helped. He also understood that even if there was a pie in the sky, it would almost never fall on him. He also understood that if he wanted to live the life he wanted, he had to rely on his own hard work and seriousness. At most, the chances would increase by half. The other half would be luck. If luck wasn't on his side, then all his hard work would be for naught. However, if he didn't work hard, he wouldn't even be able to live. If he worked hard, at least he could still pay for his father's medical expenses. During the holidays, He could buy new clothes for his mother. He tried to study again, but he really wasn't cut out for it. He could read countless books, but he couldn't deal with the exam at all. There were many things that he couldn't learn at all. Take it. This is not much to me at all. I'm giving it to you because your service makes me feel very good. I've stayed in many big hotels, but it's really rare to meet someone as sincere as you. Under Tang's persuasion, White Saint took the cash with trembling hands. Because Miss Tang is my hard-won guest, I will serve every guest seriously. You're a little different from other waiters. White Saint revealed a shy smile. Because I really need this job. I take the guest's tip and do my best to give the guest the best service. This doesn't sound like something a young man in his 20s would say. White Saint only smiled and didn't explain anything. He asked Tangua if she needed anything. If there was nothing else, he would leave first. After White Saint went out, Tangua received a call from the company. Boss, good news. We have signed contracts with a few overseas publishing houses. We have also signed contracts with some publishing houses on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. Boss, those are all money. Are you sure you don't feel the pinch? Well done. Boss, when are you coming back? Didn't you say that you went out to look for a fine steed? Have you found the stallion? I found them, but I can't bring them back for the time being. After a while, they will shine brightly. Not a single one of her fine steeds could be missing. She wanted everything that Kong In had his eyes on. They were all money trees. She brought them back to work and earn money for her system. Then they should be thanking the great host. If it wasn't for the great host, after Kong In messed with them, they probably wouldn't have the chance to make a comeback. At present, Tangua had already gained access to many markets. The reason why she had opened up these markets was mainly to dig a hole for Kong Un. For example, if it was a literary work, if it was published in advance, Kong In would give up on copying it. Then she wouldn't be able to trick Kong In. Vertex. Chapter 3730. If all their works were stored on a private website, it would be a little hard to get through. If she let those who were targeted by Kong In publish a traditional Chinese serial first, or a physical one first, or a comic first, or an overseas version first. Under such circumstances, Kong In would definitely not be able to find out anything. Fortunately, Kong In did not copy a few people when it came to literary works. In this aspect, she only copied White Saint and another military author. In the comics, she copied Ji Yu and Yi Yuling. Kong In was still smart. She felt that if the works she copied were too complicated and varied in style, it would easily arouse suspicion. If she only copied a few people, it would not be so easy to arouse suspicion. Therefore, she copied from every industry. Who could do anything to her? She had calculated the time to publish these. White Saint received a considerable tip. He did not want others to see it, so he kept a low profile. However, such a large stack of money was still seen by others. The waiters outside all knew that this was a tip from Tangua. They could not help but mock White Saint for being lucky. The next day, when Tangua went shopping, two waiters from the hotel greeted her enthusiastically. Tangua realized that White Saint was standing in his original position and could not come over. He was most likely ostracized by his colleagues again. She nodded at White Saint and went out. Since these waiters wanted to snatch the credit again, she would let them snatch it all they wanted. At noon, Tangua returned. As expected, it was not White Saint who came to receive her. It was the same two waiters from the morning. They spoke to her eagerly and asked if she needed anything. In their opinion, Tangua would at most buy some bags and jewelry when she went shopping. It was impossible for her to buy anything heavy. However, Tangua took off her sunglasses and said to them, "There's a piece of luggage in the trunk. Help me carry it into the room." The system emphasized that the host had used the word carry, which meant that the thing was very heavy. The two of them hurriedly went to get the luggage. In the end, they spent a lot of effort, but could not move it. Their foreheads were full of cold sweat. "Isn't it a little heavy?" Tangua asked considerately. "Go and get more people to move it." Shishing had no choice but to call two more people over. But in the end, they still couldn't move it. Seeing how tired they were, Tangua took out money from her wallet and gave each of them 10 yuan. Go and call that young man over. He helped me carry my luggage yesterday. I think he is stronger." In the end, the waiters could only give up and glare hatefully at Sage White. Tangua was not afraid that they would find trouble with White Saint. She would vent her anger first. In any case, she was determined to have Sage White, this fine steed. When she checked out, it would be the time for the White Saint to sign with her company. At that time, how could these people make things difficult for the White Saint? Before White Saint came over, Dunn took out a small black stone from a side pocket of the suitcase and put it into the system space. The luggage was a little heavy, but it wasn't so heavy that it couldn't be lifted. She couldn't lift it because she had placed a piece of profound stone there. Although it was only the size of a thumb, it was enough to crush a person. White Saint easily carried the luggage out. It was a little weird, as it didn't seem too heavy. Could it be that these people really thought that they were young masters, and that their strength had deteriorated to such an extent? He didn't think too much about it, and helped Tangua bring the luggage back to the hotel room. Peak. Chapter 37-31. This time, Tangua gave White Saint another stack of money. White Saint rejected it. "Miss Tang already gave me a lot yesterday. It's enough for you to stay in the hotel. If Miss Tang has any instructions, you can call me. I can't ask for more. Take it. I like you." After all, he was her future horse. He was working for her to earn money. What was a little tip to him now? In the future, White Saint's works would be worth tens of millions, or even hundreds of millions of yuan. If it was adapted into a movie, the box office would be in the billions. Not to mention the side effects, he was simply a money tree. White Saint felt a little uncomfortable under Tangua's gaze. He was very sure that this rich lady definitely didn't like him. Her gaze was as if she was looking at a peerless treasure. This thought made him a little unsure whether to laugh or cry. "I'm going out to buy something tomorrow. There's no one to help me carry it. Can your hotel waiter go out with me?" "Yes, I'm talking about you." "Sure, but I need to talk to the hotel first." "Okay, go and tell them my request. You'll go out with me for the next few days." The next day, Tangua brought White Saint out. White Saint felt the gazes from his colleagues, but he didn't care. After all, he was used to being ostracized. What he needed to do now was to do good deeds for this rich lady. Perhaps God saw that he had been unlucky for 2 years, and was willing to let him be lucky this time. After helping this rich lady for a few days, his father's medical fees for this month would basically not be lacking. He could also improve the food at home, and buy new clothes for his mother. Thinking of this, White Saint couldn't help but laugh. Tangua brought White Saint to a small town, as if she was really a tourist in the city. However, halfway through the town, she met Huayan. What a coincidence! Huayan's gaze landed on White Saint. Seeing that White Saint was looking at Tangua with a more respectful gaze, he relaxed a little. This White Saint looked like a little kid. He wasn't even 20 years old. He shouldn't be her type. He didn't mean to follow Tangua. It was just that the director had brought up a problem with the script, and asked him to help take a look. Actually, a certain big star felt that she didn't have enough lines, and wanted to add more. Huayan had seen this kind of thing many times. If it didn't affect the script too much, of course he would add more. If he couldn't add more, he wouldn't. He would let the director think of a way to make up the story himself. After discussing the script, they came out of the hotel, and saw White Sage and Tangua taking a taxi out. Then he couldn't help but follow them. "Young Master Hua, you're also visiting the ancient town?" Tangua looked at Huayan's eyes. "The dark circles under your eyes don't seem to have disappeared. You must have stayed up all night. I've been thinking about the script every day. I just had a discussion with the director about the new script. There's a superstar who insisted on adding more scenes for herself, because she felt that she didn't have enough lines. Just because a superstar says so, you'll do it." Actually, that's not the case. That big star has also invested a lot of money. He just wants to add some lines for himself. The other party's acting skills are also not bad. If he can add some lines, it'll be the best of both worlds. It's not a big deal for a win-win situation. He had seen too many big stars. If they wanted to add more lines, they would do it casually. They didn't care about small scriptwriters like them at all. Chapter 37-32. I wonder who this is. Hua Yin finally shifted the topic to White Saint. Your younger brother? He's quite handsome. Hua Yin praised him against his will. He didn't like White Saint. White Saint was now a very perceptive young man. He quickly said, I'm a waiter at the hotel. I'm here to run errands for Miss Tang. Oh, I see. Hua Yin saw that White Saint was carrying a lot of bags. There was nothing ambiguous between the two of them. He felt relieved and said to Tanghua, It's almost noon. You promised to treat me to a meal last time. Did you forget? No, let's do it now. They found a good restaurant. White Saint wanted to refuse at first. After all, he was just an errand boy. Hua Yin observed along the way, and found that this young man didn't have any bad intentions. He even tried his best to make room for him, which made him very satisfied. Let's eat together. Otherwise, we won't feel comfortable eating. White Saint suddenly felt that in this world, whether it was rich or poor, there were good and bad people. There were rich and poor people who looked down on others, and there were also people who respected others. He suddenly felt a little touched, because he hadn't been respected like this in a long time. After lunch, Tanghua asked Hua Yin to have afternoon tea. While drinking tea, she opened her phone and looked at a movie. Are you watching this too? Hua Yin asked. Before this, Tanghua asked White Saint for a favor when he wasn't paying attention. Only then did he understand why Tanghua asked White Saint to follow her. It turned out that White Saint used to be an author. He had fallen into this situation because of the plagiarism scandal. Tanghua nodded. Yes, you're watching it too? I'm watching it. I even joined her fan group. What surprised me was that the author of this novel was actually a girl. It's hard to imagine that such a huge worldview, which belongs to the heroic spirit of Xianxia, was written by a high school girl. After White Saint heard this, he couldn't help but glance at Tanghua's phone. He happened to see the cover. At that moment his face turned pale. It could be said that the beginning of his dream was this novel. But the beginning of his nightmare was also this novel. He clearly didn't plagiarize. Every word was painstakingly written on the notebook with a gel pen. It was only on Friday that he typed them out one by one and sent them up. However, the other party really did release it earlier than him. If it wasn't for the fact that he was certain that he hadn't read the other party's work, he might have suspected that he had subconsciously copied the other party's work. However, he was certain that every word he said belonged to him. However, no one believed him. Thinking of the grievances back then, White Saint couldn't help but tear up. Life had not crushed him, but at this moment, he was on the verge of breaking down. This was his dream, but now he could no longer pick up the pen. There was no chance for him to start over. His father's illness could not wait, so there was no time for him to create works. What he needed was money. He needed to earn as much money as possible. Only with a stable income could he maintain his current lifestyle. What happened to you? Tanghua, of course, saw that White Saint was about to cry. Perhaps as a man, he held back all his tears in the end. I see that you've been staring at my phone. Have you seen this movie too? White Saint shook his head. I haven't. Vertex. Chapter 37-33. Although he hadn't read it, many of the plots were in his mind. He had imagined the plot countless times, but he never had the courage to write it down word by word. He had once done this, and was seen by someone. The person asked him, Do you really like this? You actually copied it down word by word. It's not a famous work, so why did you put in so much effort? Of course, no one knew how sad he felt when he heard this. In the face of evidence and facts, no one would understand his difficulties. At this time, Hua Yin continued to change the topic. How's Yi Yuling? Wu Qing took good care of her, and she can speak now. After a while, she should be able to pick up the brush again and draw better works. That's good. Hua Yin sighed. That incident was a huge blow to her. Why are you so sure that she came up with all her paintings on her own and didn't plagiarize Kong En? Tanghua smiled and said, Based on what happened to me, I guessed it at first. Later, I accidentally found out about it, so I asked someone to inquire about Yi Yuling's situation. I also asked Wu Qing. During the creation of Small Alley, Yi Yiling discussed a lot with her. Later, I found out about something else, and found out that the manga Small Alley was a fusion of her own story. I see, Hua Yin said. At the same time, he noticed that White Sage had calmed down and was attracted by the story they were discussing. After all, White Sage shouldn't be unfamiliar with the name Kong Un. Do you know how the name Small Alley came about? Tanghua asked Hua Yin. In order to attract White Sage, she was naturally well prepared. Hua Yin was curious and asked, why? I really don't know about this, but I think it has something to do with her own story. Every author who is depressed must have experienced something unusual before they are able to create works that make people think deeply about them. As expected of the scriptwriter, you guessed right. The name Small Alley was indeed based on her. Yi Yiling's mother died in elementary school, and she had a stepmother. When her brother was not around, she could still have her own room. When she entered junior high school, her family moved to a new house with 1 bedroom and 2 living rooms. Her stepmother and father shared 1 room, and her younger brother shared another. The place where she lived was just a small space separated from the living room. It was long and narrow, just like a dark alley. Because of the misfortune of my family when I was young, the manga I created always gives people a melancholy feeling. Tanghua continued. But after I read all her works, I realized that they were still a little different from what people had imagined. In her Jiu manga, even if the protagonist is very tragic, even if the ending is not good, the protagonist has never given up pursuing hope, even until death. Let's hope that she can pull herself together sooner and create better works. With a good boss like you, she will definitely succeed. Hua Yin continued. These words were his sincere blessings. As a screenwriter, he naturally knew that it was not easy to create. He also hated those who stole the fruits of his labor. It was really detestable, but there was no way to stop them. Vertex. Chapter 37-34. By the way, are you going to write and compose songs in the future? Hua Yin continued to change the topic and brought it to Tanghua. Tanghua nodded, and then shook her head. With the current storm, I'm afraid I won't be able to do that for the time being. But whenever I have inspiration, I will save my work on a private website. Even if I write a song, no singer would dare to sing it. Who would dare to sing a song that has a history of plagiarism? But you didn't plagiarize anyone, Hua Yin said with certainty. Hua Yin said with certainty. I've listened to all the songs you've written before. The lyrics and music are all your own, and the style is the same. Especially the song that's involved in the plagiarism controversy. It contains so much content that it doesn't seem like it was written by an ordinary high school student. To be able to create this song, you must have gone to a lot of places, right? You guessed right. In order to create this song, I went to a lot of places. Some were beautiful, some were not. I also listened to a lot of local music. Finally, I came up with this song. But Kong In released it before me on the internet. I have no other records to prove it, so I can only admit defeat. Hearing this, White Saint felt a trace of anger in his heart. He believed that the manga author that Tanghua was talking about definitely didn't steal anyone else's work. He also believed that Tanghua didn't plagiarize Kong In, because their experiences were exactly the same. Kong In released their works first, but they couldn't explain themselves and were attacked by the entire internet. The unwillingness that had been hidden in his heart suddenly emerged at this moment. White Saint's eyes couldn't help but become fiercer. That strong unwillingness made White Saint feel like his body was about to explode. White Saint. Tanghua called White Saint again. White Saint looked at Tanghua with red eyes and said, Miss Tang, I believe that you were framed. What's wrong? Miss Tang, you might not believe it, but I was also one of the people who was framed. If I hadn't met Miss Tang, I might have buried this secret in my heart for the rest of my life. Now that I've found someone like me, I want to share my story. This matter had been suppressed in his heart for 2 whole years. In these 2 years, every day was very uncomfortable. He didn't dare to look at any works, because he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold on when he thought of the dark days in the past. Alright, go ahead. Since White Saint was willing to speak, It meant that this fine steed was already hers. Seeing Tangua's happy appearance, Huayan could not help but smile. However, she had to admit that her method of resonating with others was indeed very easy to open their hearts to. White Saint was different from Yi Yuling. She couldn't just go up and tell him her objective. The other party might be suspicious and think that she was joking. She couldn't arouse his fighting spirit. After all, this young man had slowly polished himself. A person whose heart had been polished until it was smooth would not be able to arouse the desire to create. White Saint slowly told his story. Seeing that Tangua and Huayan were listening attentively, he was extremely touched. He felt that he had finally found two people who were willing to believe in him. No one could understand this feeling. It was like suddenly seeing a shining star in the dark night. The stars also told him that the light was shining for him. At this moment, a strong unyielding spirit rose in his heart. The sharpness that belonged to a young man once again appeared on his body. Vertex. Chapter 37-35. He couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept his fate. He wanted to work hard to change his situation and get what belonged to him. It wasn't wealth. It was his hard work. If he didn't have wealth, there would be many opportunities to get it again. But if his hard work was taken away by someone else, it was simply killing him. After hearing White Saint's words, Tangua asked, "White Saint, do you still want to continue your creative dream?" White Saint was stunned. "I want to in my dreams, but reality doesn't allow me to. I've already grown up. I have to carry this family. I don't have any extra time to fulfill my dream. I can't cause more trouble for my parents. Because of the previous cyber attack, my father fell ill. Now, he needs a lot of money every month to treat his illness. Because of that incident, my mother had to be fired. Now she can only do some odd jobs. I don't want her to work so hard. Although I really want to fulfill my dream, before I chase my dream, I have to eat first and earn money to treat my father's illness." To be able to say something like this, who knew how much bitterness and helplessness he had experienced? Huayan didn't interrupt at all. He had always known that there were many people in this world who didn't have it easy. They weren't born with a silver spoon like him. Because he was a screenwriter, most of the time, the scripts he wrote needed to be close to reality. This was also his dream. Therefore, he would often go to some corners to watch other people's lives. The place he went the most was the hospital. In that place he could really see the various forms of life. This made the stories he wrote even more attractive. "White Saint, I see that you're a talent. I want to sign you. Are you interested? I can give you an advance payment. When your scripts earn money, the advance payment will be deducted from it." White Saint was a little confused. Didn't she say it was a dream? Why did she mention signing a contract? "I'm the boss of a cultural company. Currently, I have a website that mainly makes comics. As for the film industry, Tangua didn't plan to get involved. Too much of a monopoly wasn't good for all walks of life. It wasn't conducive to social development. She wasn't really here to be a businessman. She was here to change her and these people's fates. What if I don't have that much money in the future? Won't you lose out? I've always had good taste. I've already given you the conditions. You're a young man after all. Just say if you want to do it or not. If you miss today's opportunity, you won't have another chance in the future. Miss Tang, are you really willing to pay me in advance?" White Saint couldn't help but ask again. After all, this money was related to his father's life. "I know that your father is seriously ill and needs to spend at least $6,000 a month, right?" "Yes, I'll do it as long as I have the 6,000 yuan to keep my dad on his medication." Intuition told White Saint that this was his last chance. If he missed it, he would never be able to make a comeback in this lifetime. However, in the face of his dreams, his father's life was the most important. If he could only choose one, he would choose his father. "Okay, let's go to the hospital now and pay for your father's medical expenses for 10 years first. In addition, I'll give you an advance of 3,000 yuan for your living expenses every month. This is not for free. Every payment will be recorded in the account book. When you earn money in the future, you can deduct it from it. I'll get someone to draft the contract. It'll be written in black and white. You don't have to worry, and so do I. What do you think? Vertex. Yi Yiling's condition was getting better and better. She was already holding a pen. Seeing that everything is thriving, Tang Gua is very happy. I remember in the plot, he will lose everything and end up working as a security guard. I think so. The system said a little awkwardly. That retired veteran was not a business person at all. He lost half of his fish pond and was cheated of the other half. In the end, he had no money and had no choice but to be a security guard. Chapter 37-37. It was during his time as a security guard that he began to write about military affairs and became famous. That's not important. Tongzi, from today onwards, send him small advertisements from my company and let him write until he contributes to my company. Because of the veteran and white saint, Tang Gua decided to start a physical magazine. In order to get Kong Un to fall into the trap, she really put in a lot of effort. Starting a physical magazine and collecting some mature serialized articles was all to arrange a place for the veteran's military affairs. Under normal circumstances, netizens and students would not be too interested in such a mature magazine. After all, there were so many physical magazines, and there was no guarantee that everyone had read them. She decided that the veteran's first book would be serialized in the magazine. Just this step alone, if Kong Un dared to copy it, would definitely be enough to make her suffer. The main thing was that although there were many online sites, it had not reached the level where everyone was popularized, and the audience for physical articles was still okay. Tang Gua did as she said, and immediately asked someone to go through the procedures. A certain veteran who was strolling by the fish pond suddenly found an advertisement on his phone. At first he did not notice it, but later, he clicked on it and read it with relish. A month later, he went shopping and was given a magazine. He brought it back and flipped through it, and found that the publisher of the magazine seemed a little familiar. So he took out his phone and found the website that he had saved before. It was really a company. At the back of the magazine, there was also a way to submit. So late one night, the veteran who had a dream of writing could not help but turn on the computer that he only used to watch TV and began to type. He began to write work several years in advance. Another half a month later, Tang Gua received a message from the system. Host, the veteran has come to submit. Okay, you can arrange it. Let them serialize this veteran's manuscript in the next issue. Also, contact him by email and let him leave an address. When the time comes, send him some magazines back. Okay, host. The system thought of something and said happily. Host, counting the time, the veteran is about to go bankrupt. In a few days, his childhood friends will come to cheat him of his money. And then his engaged wife seems to be running away. It's okay, he will have a better one in the future. Even if the whole world abandoned him, the dream station would always be his home. What kind of business was that? It was simply a waste of talent. He should have shone brightly in the history of literature. System, I'll listen to your nonsense. However, what the host said was right. Old soldiers were suitable for this line of work and eat this bowl of rice. My dear host, you're indeed the talent scout of this world. Looking at these fine steeds, if it wasn't for Madam Host, their lives would definitely be lacking something. It would take some time for Kong Un to steal a fashion designer's work. The reason why creators like White Saint could become so popular was, of course, the explosion of the internet. Therefore, all she had to do now was wait for the era of the internet explosion to arrive. Her family owned a clothing company, so Tang Gua called her parents and told them that she was interested in the company. Xiaogua, do you like this company? I saw that your literary website was set up in a hurry. I really didn't expect it to succeed. It was really beyond our expectations. Vertex. Chapter 37-38. Alright, since you want to manage that clothing company, I'll leave it to you. As long as their daughter liked it, they would give it to her. The main thing was that their daughter was capable and powerful. She definitely wouldn't ruin that company. Tongzi, Help me keep an eye on that designer. Host, don't worry. She's still a high school student. This year's college entrance examination. After the college entrance examination, there are still 4 years before she graduates and starts working. Kangin won't be involved in this industry for a while. A month later, the veteran's military affairs had begun to be serialized in Dream Building Miscellany. Once it was serialized, it attracted many readers. Dream Building Miscellany was a magazine that was newly released in the past few months. Unexpectedly, it was a high-quality product. As soon as it appeared, it attracted a wave of readers who liked to buy magazines. Most of these readers were adults, and there were even people in their 40s or 50s. This was also why the magazine was called Dream Building Miscellany. The main thing was that the narrative style was mature. Part of the story was close to reality, and the other part was full of legends. It was very popular. The first issue of the veteran's military affairs attracted many people. They felt that the details he wrote in it were very realistic. It was as if they were there. When the veteran received the first payment and the magazine, he was about to go bankrupt. His childhood friend borrowed money to run away, and his fiancée broke off the engagement. He was originally discouraged, but when he saw the thousands of yuan in his account, he was full of confidence and continued to write. However, in order not to worry his parents, he still found a job as a security guard. The main thing was that he had nothing to do, and it didn't affect his writing. Working while not affecting his dream was simply the most perfect decision in his life. As more and more readers came, Tanggua officially sent someone over to sign a contract with the veteran. There was no problem with the veteran, so Tanggua turned her attention to Jiyu. Jiyu's manga had been serialized on both sides of the Taiwan Strait, and was very popular. After all, this was a work that was really out of the industry. It would definitely be liked by girls on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. Tanggua asked the system to screen the internet. Currently, there was no trace of Jiyu's serialization on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. Kangin would probably only imitate it when he needed to use it. After so much time, when Tanggua went to see Yi Yuling again, she smiled at Tanggua. Can I really sign a contract with Dream Building Station? Yi Yuling asked hesitantly. The brush was her hope, dream, and life. Without the brush, her world would be without it. Of course, I think you are a talent. You will help me make a lot of money in the future. Tanggua said with a serious face, making people dumbfounded. I want to continue drawing comics, so I want to sign a contract. Yi Yuling's voice was very gentle and soft. She was like a delicate flower that could be destroyed by a gust of wind or a drop of rain. Thank you for believing in me. I will definitely create the best work. Okay, I'll wait for your work. At present, Kangin was still serializing Jiyu's Spring Day, and there was still a long way to go before the end. Jiyu's later works continued her original style. Healing. It was the kind that made people laugh involuntarily when they saw it once. Chapter 37-39. Tanggua had even flipped through it. Compared to the original plot, the characters' personalities were more developed, and there were also some other characters. Tanggua wasn't surprised by such a situation at all, because a person's experience was different. Even if they were to create the original work again, there would be all kinds of changes. But she could say with certainty that Jiyu's work was better and more soulful than the original plot. In fact, there were still some flaws in Jiyu's early works. After all, he was still young. But now, after all this, Jiyu's work had been sublimated. Similarly, White Saint's work was the same. The second Xianxia that White Saint created was also in the plot. After Tanggua compared the two, she realized that White Saint's current work was very different. The biggest change was his personality. Perhaps White Saint's experience in those 2 years had given him the skill to write a character's heart. The characters that he created, even if it was a small character, had their own unique style and function. And the process of the protagonist's tribulations had become more tortuous. There were also fewer unimportant plots in the story. There were also changes in the characters. In any case, the current work was even more perfect because of the experience in those 2 years. Because of the physical magazine, Tang Gua let White Saint's work be serialized in the physical magazine first. After all, the entire article had a lot of words. Even if it was serialized in the magazine, it wouldn't be that many words in a few years. When the time came, it wouldn't affect anything when it was moved to the internet. Let's see who would be able to steal his work in black and white. When the internet exploded, with the number of words in White Saint's work, it might not even be serialized. At that time, it would be moved to the internet. At that time, the part of the magazine Dream Building Miscellaneous about White Saint's work would probably be out of print and couldn't be bought. White Saint didn't understand why Tang Gua let him be serialized in the magazine first. But that wasn't important. What was important was that he had royalties. Although it wasn't much now, it wasn't a problem for him to maintain his life. As his work became more and more popular, the royalties he received also became more and more. I have my reasons for doing this. Don't be anxious. In the future, I will let your book be officially published and serialized on the internet. It's even possible to make it into a TV series in the future. Sister Tang, I'm not anxious at all. I'm just excited. By the way, there's nothing like my work on the internet right now, right? White Saint asked a little fearfully. Tang Gua shook her head. Don't worry, no. Even if there is, it will be later than you. Kong'an was still copying the first book, and had no time to steal this one. When Kong'an made his move, it would be time for her reputation to be ruined. After everything was on track, Tang Gua did not specifically poach authors from other platforms. After all, balance and harmonious development were the best for the industry. She was not a real businesswoman. She just needed to get her 1,000-mile horse. Next, she began to make calls through various channels. Of course, this was very expensive. Whether it was advertising or opening up channels, it was basically the same as burning money. However, she knew that the internet explosion was coming soon. She would be able to earn back the money she had now, during that period of time. She's copying your songs again. Hua Yin often came to Tang Gua. Although Tang Gua would not release her songs, she would write and sing them herself. Many times, Hua Yin came to look for her and saw her work. Peak. Chapter 3740. These works were all earlier than Kong'an's. Therefore, he was sure that Kong'an was definitely a thief. Even if they were inspired, it was impossible for every song to be exactly the same, right? He couldn't stand Kong'an being so arrogant. She was doing so well with other people's things, and even framed the original author for stealing other people's fruits of labor. Seeing that Tang Gua hadn't asked about this matter, he really wanted to find a hacker to hack Tang Gua's private website and release all the lyrics and songs recorded in it, so that the netizens could see who was the plagiarist. There's no hurry. When I make my move, I'll make sure that she'll never be able to make a comeback. Hua Yin was a little helpless. I really don't know what you're going to do. It makes me very curious. Although he was curious, he didn't ask any further. Not prying into other people's secrets was the best respect for a person. Time passed quickly. At this time, Kong'an was already a freshman. The serialization of Spring Day was basically over. Because of the popularity of Spring Day, Kong'an also held a fan meeting somewhere. On this day, countless fans came to Kong'an's fan meeting with excitement. Kong'an was pure and beautiful. Not only were there fans, but there were also reporters. After all, in their eyes, Kong'an was really a perfect person from a young age. As for her mediocre years, it had long been covered by all the brilliance on her body. They only saw her shining like a gem. Kong'an, who was at the scene, very patiently answered the fans' questions, signed autographs, and took photos with them. At this time, a reporter came to interview her. Well, under what circumstances did you create a healing manga like Spring Day? When you were creating this comic, were you happy or sad? It was worth mentioning that the author of Spring Day, Ji Yu, had never been interviewed by a reporter, and had never told anyone about her experience. Therefore, even if her works were one after another, no one could understand her inner world. There was no way to share Ji Yu's inner world with her fans. Therefore, no one could imagine that Ji Yu's heart would be depressed, sad, and hesitant. At this time, Kong'an replied, Of course it's because I've lived in a happy family since I was a child that I created such a healing manga. When I was creating this work, I was always happy in my heart. I just wanted to bring everyone a happy, happy world where everyone can see the sun. Wow, our NN is so gentle, the fans cheered. The reporter asked again. I remember that before this spring day, NN had also completed Small Alley, which was also very popular. There were even people who plagiarized this work. Fortunately, everyone's eyes were sharp, so NNN was not wronged. Moreover, the style of Small Alley was completely different from this part. After watching it, many people said that they couldn't accept it. It was simply depressing. In that case, I was very curious. How on earth was NN able to create two works with such different styles? Is there any special story or experience in this? Not only were the reporters curious, but Kongnun's fans were also curious. That's right. There was a huge difference between these two styles. Moreover, the style was also very different. Kongnun maintained his smile. I created Spring Day because I'm very happy. In addition, creation is priceless, so I hope that some people can cherish their own feathers. Vertex. Chapter 3741. I created Small Alley because I saw that not all people in this world are happy. There are many people whose lives are gloomy. Because of some of the things I saw before, the work Small Alley came about. The interview continued, but Kongnun didn't know that there were a few people standing outside the fan circle. Are you two okay? Tanggwa glanced at Yi Yuling and Jiyu. Do you feel sad that your work has been misinterpreted by her? Jiyu pursed her lips lightly. I'm sure that it's not a coincidence. She copied me. If she hadn't been so sure before, Kongnun's explanation made her 100% sure. There were many little tricks in that comic that she had secretly hidden in it. Reading it once could only see the surface. Reading it again would reveal more information. Of course, it was also possible that no one would discover the little things hidden in it after reading it countless times. I'm not angry anymore. Yi Yuling smiled freely. Like Jiyu, I'm sure that she copied me. She doesn't know the meaning of our work at all. This time I'm relieved. It seems that your mentality is much better than I thought. No wonder your works are so popular overseas. You two just wait. There will be a good show to watch soon. Ji still had thick bangs. She was also a high school student now. However, she had such a hairstyle because she didn't want people to pay attention to her. She only liked to stay in the quietest place to complete her comic world. Sister Guogua, what's the good show? Jiyu's eyes were like grapes. They rolled around and were full of spiritual energy. Can you tell me in advance? Tanggwa refused. No. I see. Jiyu was a little disappointed and made a very pitiful expression. Tanggwa ignored her. She even glanced at her. Just focus on your drawing. What's the point of knowing so much? It'll be a surprise if you know when the time comes. It's also a surprise to know in advance. Jiyu quibbled. However, seeing that Tanggwa didn't say anything, she didn't ask again. At this moment, Yi Yuling tugged at Tanggwa. Sister Tang, Brother Hua is here for you. Then he revealed a mischievous smile. Then you can go back by yourselves? Tanggwa asked. After confirming, she walked towards Hua Yan's car. Yi Yuling looked at Tanggwa's back and recalled the time when she was brought into the casino. In fact, she wasn't really stupid. It was just that her life was hopeless, and she was sent to a mental hospital by her family. As long as they didn't take her out, she could only stay there forever. Her father was a drunkard and gambler. He took over all the money she had earned over the years, and she lost all her will. When she was sent to the casino, she felt even more hopeless. She just didn't expect that this would be the turning point in her life. It turned out that her life, which she thought was gloomy, could actually be so radiant. What do you think is the surprise that Sister Guogua mentioned? Jiyu's face was still cold, but her eyes were filled with curiosity. I really want to know. Yi Yuling patted Jiyu's head and whispered. Do you think you're the only one who wants to know? Even Brother Hua can't find out the secret that Sister Tang wants to hide. How can the two of us find out? I think Brother Hua can find out. But if he finds out, he definitely won't tell us. Jiyu came to her own conclusion. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.